patriotism, guts and enthusiasm of Scottish people makes them into very good soldiers. They are different from other soldiers, perhaps not better, perhaps not worse, but they're very good soldiers, tough, tenacious little men.
The Scottish soul has certain qualities: courage, compassion, sense of humour, the ability to turn defeat into victory when all seems to be lost.
To people the world over, the kilted Scottish soldier says Scotland. Aggressive, stern, frugal, obedient, brave. The adjectives swarm in like locusts. And yet it is the duty of the Scottish soldier to kill, or be killed. This year, as in every recent year, 1,200 young men will take the Queen's Shilling and join one of the 7 infantry regiments which make up the Scottish division. They have become soldiers. Scottish soldiers.
Right, please take a seat. My name's Sergeant Alec Carmack with the Royal Signals. Can I have your name, please?
Douglas Craig.
Douglas Craig, right. And how old are you, Douglas?
18.
Are you employed at the moment, Douglas?
No, I'm not.
You're unemployed, eh?
Uh-huh.
Right.
Unemployment is one reason. The locked factory gates and the empty shipyards have always been the best recruiting sergeants in Scotland. War is another. During the First World War, Scots proved ready volunteers when their king and country needed them. Within a month of the outbreak of war, 25,000 men had volunteered in Glasgow alone, and the figures in other parts of the country were equally high. To be seen in kilts was every young Scot's dream, but the steady hemorrhage of lives on the Western Front soon drained the volunteers, and in 1916 conscription was introduced for the first time in the country's history.
And what sort of things you wanted to do if you came into the army?
The infantry I'm interested in, so I want to be an infantryman.
Why is that?
So I like the it's supposed to be tough.
Only the young and the fit were wanted by the forces, and during the years of post-war national service, the needs of the nation's school leavers were taken care of by the army.
Hello, take a seat. Right, nice to meet you, Alan. My name's Simon Townley, and how old are you, Alan?
22.
22. Are you employed at the moment?
Aye.
And what do you do?
Chemical worker.
Chemical worker. That sounds interesting. Have you any idea what you want to do in the army?
Just, well, I'm in TAs now.
You're in the TA, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, which TA is that?
252 Lowland, to Gala Shields. It's just an infantryman. I'm a soldier now, but I'd like to stay that because I enjoy the kind of hard graft that they do a little bit, but only small bits. Nothing fancy.
Alan Gerson.
I, Alan Grierson.
Swear by Almighty God.
Swear by Almighty God.
That I will be faithful.
That I will be faithful.
And bear true allegiance.
And bear true allegiance.
To Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
To Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Her heirs and successors.
Her heirs and successors.
And that I will. As in duty bound. And in duty bound. Honestly and faithfully defend His Majesty. Honestly and faithfully defend His Majesty. His heirs and successors. His heirs and successors. His person, crown and dignity. Against all enemies.
Against all enemies.
And will observe and obey.
And will observe and obey
all orders of Her Majesty.
all orders of Her Majesty,
Her heirs and successors.
her heirs and successors,
And of the generals and officers set over me.
and of the generals and officers set over me. You feel so proud as you get into the army at that moment. You're overcome with pride. It's what I expected. I know what I'm letting myself in for.
I think I've got a commitment to give to someone, to the Queen. I've given my life to the Queen now, and I'd like to make sure I can give the rest of my life to the Queen.
But I'll give it another couple of weeks. Once I get to Glencorse here, I feel after that.
Their basic training is done at the Scottish Division's depot at Glencorse, outside Edinburgh, and it's there that they're introduced to the regiment that will be home for the next few years.
My first impression with the camp was my mother let us out the car, and when I first saw it I thought, oh, this place is bleak, there's nothing to do here. And I'll get out at nights, me stuck in, working, getting beasted and things like that. You recruit? I just reported in, Paul. You think, oh, have I done the right thing, or have I not done the right thing?
Right, that's fine. Super. That block over there, if you just want to cut across there and report to one of your platoon SEOs, okay?
Alright, okay. Cheers, thanks.
But first, when I came off the bus, I just looked at the camp and I just wondered to myself what I was doing. Because it's the first time I've been away from home. Didn't know what to expect when I was going to get homesick. I'd heard a lot of stories to get friends in the Navy. He used to tell me about homesickness, but I never experienced that. It never bothered me.
Shoulder high. Everywhere. Pull up to the rear.
A lot of them are frightened in that they don't know what lies ahead of them. For a lot of them, this is the first time they've been away from mummy's apron strings. And excited, obviously. It is a career and something which, for the majority of them, they can't find outside. Some of them have been born and brought up in a military circle, and a lot of them indeed go on to join the regiments that their brothers or fathers were in. Just like some people always want to be a fireman, some people always want to be a soldier.
Being a soldier can also mean being a Royal Scot. It's the oldest line regiment in the British Army.
It's something I'm very proud of. It's something which I know everyone who has anything to do with my regiment is proud of. It's not something which one flaunts in a pompous way, but it's something you can look back on and say, I'm carrying on a wonderful, fabulous tradition, and at times it urges you on to do better because you are taking a place in this long history and you don't want to be the bump that shows up.
Your name is?
Craig.
Your number's 2474354.
Soon after arriving, the jocks go through a process called the badging board, where they are helped decide which regiment of the 7 they're going to serve with.
Right, in you come and sit down. Right, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Your name is?
Douglas Craig.
Douglas Craig, right, Craig. Whereabouts are you from?
Clydebank.
Clydebank, near Glasgow, right. And you were enlisted where?
I was Dumbarton, I recruited in the careers office there.
And you may have some idea at the moment of which regiment you'd like to join.
But Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders.
Okay, and that's
first choice.
Your personal. I take your point. You like to go into the Argylls. At the moment, the Argylls are in the Falklands, and they're actually fully manned and fully recruited. What we're looking for at the moment are some recruits going to the Gordon Highlanders. Would you like to consider joining them?
Well, if there's no chance we get into Argyll's,
yes.
we're fine with the Gordons.
Good.
Happy with that.
That's fine. And
I wasn't too disappointed myself. You can put in another battalion, you're still part of the British Army. As far as my parents go, I don't think they'll be too disappointed either. I think they'll be quite happy.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Soldiering in Scotland is something of a national industry. From the Middle Ages until the 18th century, Scots were mercenaries in the service of foreign kings, and the officer rolls of the armies of Austria, France and Sweden are thick with Scottish names. And when the occasion demanded it, they fought one another with equal ferocity. Lowlanders served in the government forces which fought Bonnie Prince Charlie's rebellious Jacobites, learning the painful lesson that only the most disciplined troops could withstand the shock of a Highland charge. The dream of returning a Stuart king to the throne of Britain was shattered. But out of the ashes, William Pitt raised the Highland regiments to join the Lowlanders who had once opposed them. The Black Watch, the Cameron Highlanders, the Gordon Highlanders, the Highland Light Infantry, the Seaforth Highlanders, the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, the Royal Scots, the King's Own Scottish Borders.
Come in and sit down. Good. Right, your name is?
Alan Grierson.
Grierson. Okay, Grierson. Grierson, what we're going to do now, this is a badging board. What it means is you may have some idea at the moment which regiment you want to join. We'll decide by the end of this discussion as which regiment you'll be badged as.
Definitely like to go into the King's Own Scottish Borderers.
Okay, excellent. Well, we do have some vacancies in the King's Own Scottish Borderers.
I wouldn't have liked to have gone home to my mother and father and say, I've got to go in the Royal Scots or the Gordons or something, because I've had my heart set on going at the King's Own, and honestly wouldn't have liked to go in anything else.
Therefore, we can actually get for your choice just now. So I think we'll badge him as a King of the Scottish borderer.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any more questions? Good. Right, Chris. Thank you very much. One kit, Mike?
I think the most surprising thing about kit was when you go into the QM's office to pick up your kit, there's a board sits behind them and it actually prices all the kit. And the standing price for kit nowadays for one soldier is £450 odds. It's roughly about that figure. It's an awful lot of money to spend on a soldier.
1 cup canteen. 1 pair of gloves combat. 2 jerseys. 1 knife, fork and spoon.
To taught how to wear the uniform as a very basic lesson here. It's really an intangible thing, and it's all to do with what's gone before the family, the family regiment. When they reach their regiment, they will be sucked into a very large family. They'll be expected to come up to the standards of their regiment, and that's what makes it all happen.
1 hold all. 2 jackets combat. 2 trousers combat.
We first came in and that's down to the QM's block. I didn't know what sort of kit to expect.
2 ties.
I didn't think you'd get that much. With my cousin being in the army, I thought you were about in the tartan trews all the time.
1 field dressing.
It's the proudest in my life I've ever felt. This kit, just like to know how I feel with my kilt on.
I hadn't heard anyone ever complain about the kilt with the exception that if it got wet, it was rather heavy. And then, of course, there were lice and things like that. Then we had a khaki apron which covered the kilt, which was supposed to stop the Germans from recognising whichever regiment. It didn't work. They knew as much about it as we did. The American doctor said to me, well, why didn't you run away? And I told him, because I was wearing a kilt.
Squad! Squad! Stand in! Get your arms.
Today's recruit is not just playing at soldiers. At Glencorse, he's being trained to become a specialised infantryman, but his days are still filled with the kind of activity every old soldier recognises.
Drill. The principle of drill is to instill good teamwork, coordination, pride, and the ability to react instinctively to a given command.
Think about it, son. Over here, big fella. It took you about half an hour to do that. I don't know what you're doing with your hands, son.
I'm glad I was a soldier. Made a man of me for a start, instead of a playboy. But it straightened me up. I learned sense in the army. I went to the army, I got my third-class certificate of education. I got my second-class certificate of education. I got my first-class certificate of education with a distinguished in mathematics. That was how I got promotion so rapidly.
Grierson failed to turn up on time this morning and on arrival was dispatched to the guardroom, and I suspect may later on today turn up on a charge in front of me. It's all about reliability. He knew exactly when and where he should turn up and how he should turn up, and he failed to do so. It's not a terrible crime, but it's the sort of thing which, unless people learn, then the whole system that we operate on will begin to crumble. If he had required to take, in an operational situation, to be somewhere at a certain time and had failed to do so, it could have cost the lives of other men.
There's a bumper. Get there. Pop that for washing my face the next 10 minutes.
I can assure you I'll not do it again, because that, no if I can help it. They say once you've been in jail, you're a man. I think if you've been in jail, you've been wrong. You've been put there as a punishment. You shouldn't be there.
And out of discipline is born a privilege, which the recruit is never allowed to forget.
Traditions of the regiment are everything, really. The regimental spirit is the inspiration on which we all depend. And that's it in a nutshell.
And here you can see Princess Margaret He's our Colonel-in-Chief, and that's why we're
Regimental history is the backbone and the strength of the British Army. There are people who want to live and die solely for their regiment and are proud of it and will tell you so.
Not all acts of courage and valour were performed on the battlefield. This is a slide of the painting of the SS Birkenhead. In 1852, Colonel Seaton was taking some recruits round to join the Kaffir War. While rounding the Cape of Good Hope, SS Birkenhead struck some rocks and started to sink. On board the Birkenhead were 26 women and children. Colonel Seaton ordered the recruits to fall in and stand to attention. The women and children evacuated the ship, and while the men were trying to make the lifeboats, the ship started to break up and sank with all hands. One of the greatest acts of courage, not on the battlefield, seen in the Victorian age.
And when I was in Civvy Street before I joined the army, I was nothing. I was nothing to look back on. But now I can say I'm in a regiment that's got a history of being good. We've had some great battle honours, my regiment. I'm proud to be part of it, and I hope if any troubles or conflicts ever happen again, I could put myself there. And my grandchild could say my father was there.
Carried by the quartermaster on parade. The next slide.
From the very outset of his training, the recruit learns the important lesson that battle honours are not just dusty dates, but an important echo of tradition and esprit de corps. Even the mottos perpetuate the military reputations of those who have gone before him. Nisi Dominus Frustra, Cujacan Ri, Baidand, Ne Obliviscaris, and most triumphant of all, Scotland's pride in being considered second to none. Nemo me impuni lacessit, Fodor medal with me.
Here at the castle where we're speaking now, as you enter the castle over the drawbridge, the Scottish motto, which is the motto of my regiment, Nemo me impuni lacessit, is above the drawbridge. And I'm told that an American visitor, of which there are many, asked the Royal Scot who was in guard one day what that meant. And he said, no 4-ton vehicles are allowed over the drawbridge.
From this summer, those same visitors will be able to take in the Scottish United Services Museum in its new headquarters, the 19th century Gothic hospital block which looms over Princess Street. Here, the story of the Scottish soldier is being told afresh, and hard facts are taking the place of wishful thinking. Yet here's a conundrum. The museum deals with history as it really happened, but that history is made up of bloodshed, death and war. Why then does it continue to attract the curious and the inquisitive?
War, warfare, battles, the army, it appeals to, dare I say it, a sort of romantic streak, I think, in a lot of people. I think they're probably quite wrong, because I'm absolutely certain there's nothing at all romantic about the reality of conflict, and probably very little romantic about actually being a soldier.
And is there anything romantic about including Captain Dalgleish, the familiar figure of the recruiting officer?
We're including Dalgleish because it's quite a good example of an officer who had to recruit his regiment several times, because it's one of the earliest uniforms we've got and is therefore important in its own right. He's complete, and we know quite a lot about the man. It makes it a human story as well as a military story. He was with the 21st Regiment, later the Royal Scots Fusiliers, and went to North America for the revolution in 1777 and was captured at Saratoga. Was under house arrest for 3 years before he was exchanged for an American prison. He didn't really have a regiment that existed, so he went back to Scotland, re-recruited the regiment, spent 6 years keeping the Irish under submission before going off to fill the garrisons in the West Indies. There, in the space of about 4 years, they lost 80 or 90% of their strength. So they had to come back to Scotland again to recreate the regiment.
The new museum is not just a parade of upmarket tailor's dummies, though. Some of the objects being prepared for display are things of beauty, which, although they might represent man's prowess in war, would be more at home in a fine art gallery than in a military museum.
The sword is the only sword carried by a Scottish infantry officer at the charge of the Light Brigade, which was entirely cavalry action. His uncle was the Earl of Lucan. Lucan was given command of the cavalry division in Crimea. And I suppose when Walter Charters, who owned the sword, heard of this, he'd been in Gibraltar. One can almost envisage him in modern terms, picking up the telephone, ringing his uncle and saying, "Uncle, I hear there's a war on, can you find me a job?" And Uncle Lucan says, "Yes, of course, Walter, come out to the Crimea as my ADC." So off he trots. I'm afraid after about 5 minutes into the action, he gets his head blown off and the sword damaged as well.
The images of Scots' courage in battle spring out of history to reinforce an idea that Scottish soldiers have been preeminent in Britain's battles. But was the Jock really braver than other men?
I don't think that was necessarily the case. There are certainly recorded instances where Scottish soldiers were conspicuously gallant. There are many recorded instances where English, Irish and Welsh soldiers were conspicuously gallant. I think, again, it's the uniform. After all, battlefields, particularly in the 19th century, covered in smoke, most appalling confusion. It's like you can't tell the story of a battle, really, because it's so difficult. There's so much confusion going on. On the other hand, if you've got one observer who sees a group of men from a distance and they appear to be wearing feather bonnets and kilts, they are distinguishable as Highlanders, and therefore he can say, oh, well, the Highlanders did well because he happens to have seen them. He probably saw other bodies of troops doing well, but couldn't tell whether they were English, Irish, Welsh, or indeed Lowland Scots, and therefore they tended not to be mentioned.
But when the Birkenhead went down, it was impossible to ignore the patient serried ranks of soldiers in tartan.
There were 3 Scottish regiments on board the Birkenhead on their way to South Africa when she found it. And the belt plate, which we have, belonged to Captain Wright, who was the senior surviving officer from the disaster. As we know, the troops should actually be read an account of the drill which kept all the men on board the ship, while the women and children took to the boats as she went down.
One thrust at the standing enemy, at the walk, advance!
Bayonet practice, there are 2 aspects to it. First of all, to teach the soldier the mechanics of fighting with a bayonet. Secondly, it promotes a good fighting spirit. It brings out aggression in them. It's not a cliche, it's for real.
The bayonet? You're either a bayonet man or you're not. I couldn't throw the idea of using cold steel until it came to the bit. We've been told all about the Highlanders, how they'd rush at us in a queer headlong charge, dealing out death with their dirks and claymores. But we'd been trained on the bayonet, and the training paid off. Suddenly, they were in amongst us. I pushed one of them aside and stabbed him through the chest. It did for him all right, but no training on earth could have prepared me for the shock of killing a man at close quarters. He dropped his sword and fell, and screamed as the bayonet ripped home. That Highland soldier has haunted my dreams ever since. Aye, you're either a bayonet man, or you're not.
The army is such a demanding job. It requires over 100% commitment that initially it envelops them and they live for the army in that there is nothing else.
There must be many an old soldier who can still adjust the sights of a Lee Enfield for the simple reason that the weapons drills were deeply impressed upon them during basic training. This year sees the introduction of the new SA-80, the Army Standard Individual Weapon.
Going on with the training on the weapon. However, try to remember most of the parts. As we already spoke about, the weapon can be fitted with a bayonet. Now, if you look at this end of the weapon, this piece here is the muzzle of the weapon.
Before I came here, I'd never handled a weapon before, apart from the ones that it shows you. Pop it to wee pigeons or whatever, wee ducks. That is as close as I got to one.
Here, this opens up. This is known as the top cover. Everybody just open them up.
It's weird knowing you've got a killing machine in your hand. There's a lot of figures for weapons, a lot of things to take in the one time. At the end of the lesson, they'll go back and they'll ask you what's this and what's that. And you've got to try and rack your brain to try and remember what it is, and it just... There is an awful lot to remember, but you've got to pick up everything fast and you've got to remember it quickly.
Safety catch. Already just try their safety catch. That's it.
A lot of time you don't get a second chance. If you're wrong, you get off. Don't get it wrong again. But if you are a bit slow, they'll pull you aside a couple and they'll explain things to you.
With the trigger and round at the trigger guard.
You get used to that way of learning.
This piece here is the
thinking
pistol
fast.
cap. And this piece on the top is known as the body of the weapon. Facing down the range. Right, lay down the GPMGs and the LSWs.
The role of the infantry is such that a man's personal weapon is what he kills with and what he defends himself with. He must be able to use it no matter how tired, cold, wet, no matter day or night, and he must be able to use it efficiently. So we teach them marksmanship, how to fire a weapon, how to fire accurately in all conditions. The range is one element of the teaching process.
Right, stand up. Prone position down. Chest and adjust. Wrong, ready?
Tend to, when you first fire it, close your eyes.
Yeah,
When you
scared
fire
it.
It's scared it because there's that much a wallop.
I'd never touched a gun before till I came here.
Three rounds, your target in front, go on.
It's an amazing experience to know when you realise what kind of damage you can do, when you see what damage a round does when it hits a target, what it could actually do to someone.
I was standing with our sergeant. We'd gone over the top. And I see the sergeant lying on the ground and his stomach was just taken right out of him. I bent over and I saw it was useless, and I just walked on with other boys. This Lance Corporal said, "You're wounded?" I said, "No." He said, "You're covered with blood." I hadn't felt a thing. And I said, "That's off the sergeant." He lifted up my kilt, and the blood running down my leg. As soon as I saw that, I felt the pain. I got down into a shelf and nothing I could do. Hope for a stretcher better because I found I couldn't walk at all there. And then all of a sudden a young German jumped into the stretcher. He looked at me and he says, "Are you wounded, Jock?" He actually spoke better English than I did because I spoke with a Glasgow accent. So after a bit he examined my wounds and then he decided he was going to carry me down to the first aid post, which was about a couple of miles back near Ypres. He carried me right down, laid me down, and of course I passed out. Then I found myself in an American hospital. Went away to the prisoner ward.
There's a lot of things in the British Army that's a lot of bull and shine and parade ground stuff. Myself, I prefer action. I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile. I pity my wits against the wits of someone else, and I hope to win.
When the gun finds its target, it bleeps out a message for all the world to hear. Scotland is poorer in men, but richer in heroes. On rough-hewn cairns and simple Celtic crosses, the words on Scotland's many war memorials speak of endeavour, courage, endurance. In 1930, the Scottish United Services Museum was established to commemorate the dead of the First World War and to gather together in one place the tools of the soldier's trade. The museum commemorates the deeds of the Thin Red Line in the Crimea and many other doughty deeds besides. There is no retreat from here, Sir Colin Campbell told the Argylls at Balaclava. You must die where you stand. Here is a living reminder that soldiers are a mysterious fraternity, a society set apart from the reality of ordinary civilian life.
Lieutenant General Sir Norman Arthur opened the North Hospital block of Edinburgh Castle as an extension to the Scottish United Services Museum with the exhibition The Story of the Scottish Soldier 1600 to 1914. He's been a serving soldier, he's commanded a regiment, he knows all about the regimental tradition, which is important to Scotland, and he's the most appropriate person.
Plenty of stories about the Scottish soldier. One that relates to General Hunter Weston. Going up to visit the HLI in the trenches one day, he passed a sad little cortege coming towards him, stretcher bearers and a still form under a blanket on a stretcher. He called out in a loud voice, "General Hunter Weston salutes the gallant dead." Corner of the blanket twitched to one side and the voice said, "What's the old bugger talking about?"
The regimental tradition is enormously popular and strong in Scotland. It's one of the backbones of the British Army as a whole, but in Scotland, because the regiments have survived, if you like, more than they have in the rest of the country, this remains important.
Those of us who serve in the Scottish Division belong to our parent regiment, say the Argylls. We want to serve there most of the time, perhaps all the time in many cases. But there's nothing very unusual about finding yourself posted to one of the other battalions. As I've said, the Black Watch, who came with me to Korea. Nothing unusual. I myself was trained by the HLI. First of all served with the 1st Black Watch in Berlin, and then served with the 1st Argylls in the Far East. And I was happy in them all. When you get into real war, as opposed to exercises, however tough, the thing that strikes a young man anyway is that you're no longer on an exercise, and that if you get wet, there's nobody going to come and tell you the exercise is over, you can go home and have a hot bath. Now the jock, as things get more and more uncomfortable, tends to get more and more cheerful. But it does help you to get through some very nasty situations. When you serve in the British infantry, you are serving with people who you know you will have to live with for the rest of your service career. If you let them down this month, then in 2 years and 5 years and in 10 years, they'll still remember it. If you're serving in many other armies, most other armies, you're posted in and out of this regiment or that, you have a sporting chance if you're in a nasty position and would like to get out quickly or run away or something, that no one who's with you then will ever see you again. Very powerful factor.
Well done, B6, let's coordinate that. Let's get our nose down to the ground and press up. Well done, sit up. Big smile, see we can't be working hard enough.
The fitness programme runs throughout the 19 weeks here and indeed carries on throughout the Army. There are various statutory tests which everybody in the Army has to pass every year. The infantry, by the very nature of the job, require to be as fit as is possible.
Go! Got it! Let's keep moving! Push up, keep going! Move, again, boys!
First time we did the assault course, they actually walked us round it. We didn't do anything. It looks a lot of fun, but it's hard.
Go! Come on, nine! Get in and out! Get up that wall! Up the wall! Don't dally-dally! Trick, get up the wall! Keep moving! Push it! Come on! Up and over! Up!
Some people come and their mothers do everything for them.
By the time they leave, they can dress themselves, they can do their own washing, they can cook for themselves, generally look after themselves. Physically, they look a lot better, they look beefed up, they're a lot fitter, and they've got a more general outlook to life.
Stand on. Come to the station when the commander comes to you.
24743549, Private Craig, Gordon Highlanders, sir.
It's all about looking after yourself. And again, it's an element of teamwork in that they're all in a room. If the room doesn't come up to the required standard, then somebody's let the rest of the room down. But it's really about equipment management, looking after their own personal equipment. It's a little bit contrived, perhaps, but if he can take the lessons he learns on inspections into how he looks after his weapon, how he looks after equipment he's entrusted with, and which other people rely on in battle, then he obviously is a far better soldier than somebody who's slipshoddy.
Dust.
All right. The other thing about it, of course, is personal hygiene. In community living without personal hygiene is a disaster. Toward the end of the training, they're doing a number of test runs. The one which they will go on to do every year from now on is a thing called the Infantry Combat Fitness Test. They're required to pass it before they leave the depot, and some of them take a number of attempts. It's very much like a marathon runner hitting the wall. Once he learns how to cope with the pain involved with it, he doesn't find it as difficult.
Afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. Stand at ease.
Okay, stand at ease. Now, who have we got here? Which platoon are you on?
Accurate platoon, sir.
Theoretically, there's no limit to how far they can go. Commissions are much easier now. Having said that, they're not all going to go on commissions. The majority will certainly have 3 years, of whom a fair percentage will end up as NCOs. Some will stay on as corporals, sergeants, and get up to sergeant major and regimental sergeant major. I mean, amongst this group, there will be a potential RSM in, say, about 18 years' time, which is middle management. And some will go on to be quartermasters and be commissioned. So what are you looking forward to? Going home for 2 weeks or going to the other town?
Getting a sleep, sir.
Getting to sleep? All this business of getting up in the morning, is it?
Yes, a big one. Go for it, dig it!
How far are the rest behind?
Up to 300 metres. Come on, get a move on! Come on, come on, come on! Line up and over. Go for it.
First mile up, I thought the pace was a bit fast. I think I was going to do it. But the encouragement you get from the NCOs and that is tremendous. It's great, it really gets you going. And then when you get all your muckers giving you a push and that, telling you to move, or else you're for it, you've had it. So you've just got to do it. And when I was told I had to carry him, I felt like just turning away and going away. But I managed it, got my spur up and I done it.
That is honestly one of the hardest things I've ever done. Oh, I feel great now I've made it. It makes it such good. Oh, I tell you something, I'll sleep the night and I feel I deserve to sleep the night.
Yourself each other up, hold your weapons, that's again. Get your kit on! Get to it! Take it out, boys.
I think, certainly in my time here at the depot, that's the first platoon that have completed it altogether without any failures. Really quite remarkable.
The rigours endured by the recruits during basic training have another attribute. Much of what they are put through at Glencorse is not particularly pleasant. It's not meant to be.
Gas, gas, gas! Gas, gas, gas! rank and name and walk out the door.
247-435-49, Private Craig Hall.
Right.
The corporal says to you, when you go in, all you do is walk around the room and jump up and down to see if your mask fits right, because you get a taste of the CS gas, it doesn't fit. So we did all this and it was all right, no trouble that way. He says, right, you take your mask off, do your name, rank and number. So I did this and I tried to be as calm as possible, so, and then I just closed my eyes and I said name, rank, number, started walking out. And I actually walked into the wall with my eyes closed.
I felt as if my lungs were going to explode. I feel my whole body burning up. I wanted to scratch my eyes out. Just got to leave it alone and let the wind get to it. For me, the gas chamber was a great experience. I enjoyed it and I'd like to do it again sometime.
I'll get a miss.
Move now! Up over the hill, side to side. Spread out, spread out. Right, spread out, you're patrolling along. Come on, get patrolling, that's it. Settle down. Come on, get over, get in the crowd. You got to automatics. What are you going to scream? Come on. Bravo! Come on, get right down the range. Fire! Out! Get in the dead crowd. Move! Move! Move your ass! Move your ass! Go down!
The key word is survivability. Everything we teach them here enables them to survive in a hostile environment. They learn to look after themselves, their equipment, how not to become a casualty, how to fit in with a team, and how to make the other side the casualties. If they remember that, then it all drops into place.
If they don't stick to the basic lessons, they're liable to be killed. Once they understand that, then they're much more able to be aggressive when faced by a terrorist or a soldier. We don't go out of our way to train them as killers.
Get up, right, get up!
I felt very uneasy, but when we were very busy and the shells bursting all over the place, we seemed really to become conditioned with it. And the result is, after we were out of the front line and dressed for a while, we were nervous. At least I was. I can only speak for myself.
When we came into the firing, we were trying to dodge what we couldn't dodge. I was in the trenches the first bit of Ypres when I got blotted out, but I didn't get to Blighty. I was 6 weeks down at base hospital and back up the line again.
I think in the first couple of months I was a bit scary, but after that, when I was on the desert when the war started with the Italians in June 40, I just got used to it. We got a few prisoners, and the gunners searched them, of course, with arms and things. And they found these pills, and a couple of the gunners had one of these, and they went fighting mad after it. So I feel that the Italians had these pills just to get them in the fighting mood.
To some extent, I felt frightened. Of course, one thing that you have in your favor, if you're in charge of men, is that you're thinking of them more than yourself, and have to, and that is a great help to one.
The basis of leadership is getting the best from your men.
You're too slow taking cover.
I will look after my men. That's what it's all about, looking after people, and if you look after them, they work well.
Not enough rounds going down the range. Okay? From there, section commander gave his orders, got his first party back into cover for covering fire.
In time of battle, many thoughts will run through the soldier's mind. Fear of fear itself. Fear of letting himself or his comrades down. Fear of being wounded and lost.
Come on, you're all right, you're all right, all right. That's the first time I've done anything like that with a makeshift casualty. We get a lot of classroom work with telling you what to do, but the way that was, I think I was shaking more than a casualty myself. It looks that realistic. I'm pleased myself to know I could cope with a lot of situations that I could never have coped with in the past. I just hope when the time comes I could use it if it was ever used for real.
For the Scottish soldier, there is an added ingredient in time of battle. The sound of the pipes and the pipers who play the tunes of glory. Winners of the Victoria Cross, like Piper Findlater of the Gordons at Dargai in 1897. or Piper Laidlaw of the King's Own Scottish Borderers, who gave many a young lad the courage to go over the top at Lewes in 1915. Although it is unlikely that the pipes will ever play men into action again, they're still a vital part of the training of the Scottish soldier. How then does the piper learn his trade?
My father taught me, initially, and then I was eventually called up for national service in 1956, and I've been piping ever since. A great deal depends upon the young lad's aptitude for the music. In a lot of occasions, we get a young lad in that has never been taught before, and he picks it up comparatively quickly, and that is the kind of young man we're looking for. They come from all walks of life, and quite a few from the Highland area have had some tuition in the pipes from a relative at some time or another. A percentage of them just hard-working loons. Try again. The Scottish soldier, and the piper in particular, has a privileged position in the regiment, and he's thought very highly of by all ranks in the regiment, from the officers right down to the fellow jock. He's unique. He's part of the regimental tradition, and it's a tradition we would dearly like to see continued. There's nothing puts more pride into a Scottish soldier's step than to march behind the pipes and drums. It lifts his spirits tremendously. They are infantry soldiers. They are fully trained infantry soldiers, and in fact they're a fighting platoon. But they are double-hatted. They are also pipers and drummers. But first and foremost, they are infantry soldiers. They enjoy doing what they do.
And then suddenly it's all over. The recruits will be split up for postings to their new regiments at home or in Germany, the Falklands, the Far East, Northern Ireland. But before the parting of the ways, there is a piece of ritual drama to be enjoyed. The passing out parade. This is the culmination of everything that's gone before in the hard weeks of basic training. It's a moment to be savoured.
They're not actually fully trained soldiers. We've had them for 19 weeks. I'd say that they're ready to take their place in a section, but they're not fully trained soldiers for probably at least another 6 months to a year.
And you've got all your mothers and fathers there, and you're in your full number 2 uniform. You feel that smart. You can turn around and you can say to them, I've done it.
It's a big day for them, and it's a big day for us. If we don't like what we see on the square and passing out parade, then it's only ourselves to blame. And so it's a good acid test for us as well. They obviously see it as the end of something, whereas of course, the great cliche, it's only the beginning. But I think soon afterwards, they begin to look ahead again and suddenly realise that they've found themselves at the bottom of the pile again.
Combat is the end to which all military training is directed. For even if war prevention is the Army's ultimate aim, war fighting is its ultimate task. And to prove it, Scottish soldiers have shed their blood throughout the world in quiet, lonely places far off the beaten track. In the plains and mountain passes of Spain, in the heat and dust of Africa and India, in the mud of Flanders, in the sand of the Western Desert, in the mountains of Korea. Many of those soldiers were volunteers in time of war who served for ideals like freedom, democracy, and basic human decency. Many more went of their own free will as professionals, following a well-trodden path by those who had gone before them. Once a jock, aye a jock, they will tell you, and their names are legion. This year, as in every other year, there's no shortage of recruits to that tradition.